All right, shall we begin? Okay, so the first thing when we met in the boardroom at the back was Mithali said, both of you are going to sit on either side and grill me, which is probably what the arrangement also looks like. But we have so much to ask you. You are one of the faces of Hyderabad cricket that's come out and sort of really taken the international world by storm. So in that sense, can you just take us back, both of you, can you take us back to your beginnings in cricket in the state and just what your systems were, the frameworks were when you started cricket early on?
Well, I started playing in 90s, and way back we were not in BCCI, under BCCI fold. So we had APWCA, Andhra Pradesh Women's Cricket Association, and even then the bifurcation didn't happen about the state. So that was the association that I've played for the under 16, under 19, even the senior level. And to begin with, the academies weren't very favorable in terms of taking the girls into for training for cricket. So we had these very few camps which would enroll girls, and it was an exclusive, like only girls you get to see. And we did have league matches. Late Mr. T.N. Pillai did organize some league matches for us, and maybe a couple of college, railways as an institution, and some I would say some personal camps who would form a team and then enroll. So that was the setup. We had to choose the players playing for the state. But as we as we got along through the years, I think that league has somewhere couldn't really carry it forward into the other era, and we had to let go those. And today there is an open trials, which I personally feel shouldn't be there. There should be more matches for the girls, for the selectors to pick quality players for representing the state. And then also the fact that many of us did train on matting wickets. Those were the facilities that was available for us. Turf wicket was only for the privileged men cricketers. Only just before international games that we would get to train maybe for a week or so and then get into the series. But the facilities were very meager sometimes, and the sponsorship was a huge deal. A lot of us did empty our parents' pocket to get us the equipments, the best bats and everything, so that we could do well. In those years, I think the scholarship that we got under the government scheme, like if you represent your state and if you're in the top 3, you apply for a scholarship. That was something that all of us depended on. You know, that was, you know, in some way helped for us to get going, whatever meager it would be. So these were some of the things in those years, but the quality of cricket was very good, I should say that, because when you're access to limited facility, then you become creative. You want to know how well you can sort of use that facility to develop your standard. And that really helped me during COVID and the bio bubble that I was in. I had to go back to all those years of training in that small room. I was able to still keep up to it because I went through that, those training way back.
Right. Nooshin, I'm sure experiences are very similar, especially when you started out, but I'd like to know, was it similar for you when you started your coaching career as well? Were the challenges the same, or what was the framework like for you to get in and begin?
Look, there was a lot of changes, what I see over a period of time. I had a stint of about 5 years for the HCA cricket. So when I left, when I decided to quit, the first thing I got an offer was from HCA as a coach. So at that point of time, we had an under 16 team and an under 19 team and a senior team. And I still remember way back the kind of development at that point of time where I have traveled to various districts alone, trying to figure out a lot of talent, because as a coach, if you want to really build, and like I totally agree to what Mithali said, we need to touch the grassroots level. And sometimes I feel that when your state is blessed with a lot of districts, you're going to get some raw talent out there. So I still remember my days as a coach. Initially, I've traveled to Adilabad, I've traveled to Kamam, Warangal, just to get about that one girl who could make the difference to HCA cricket. And we did have a couple of players who were representing the under 19. So this kind of struggle is going to be quite evident. Things changed after 2017 World Cup. Obviously, the Indian team's performance was highlighted. There was central contract, and similarly, at that point of time, we see a change in the state growth as well. So automatically, things are lined up. There were times where we have conducted a lot of inter-school competition. So as a coach, I've felt that, it's not all the time that you're blessed with turf wickets, but there's a lot of groundwork which you need to do and touch these small areas which are quite important, because look, we are not looking at 100 best girls. We're looking at that one girl who can make a difference to the sport. Because if you see, the number of girls now has, over a period of time, I still remember in COVID, it was when we had this analysis, we had around 700 to 800 girls who have been registered with the BCCI. But today, the numbers have gone double, so it's 1,800 girls registered. So there's a difference which, these India players, what they project there. And at the same time, the state also needs to do that. So out of 20 girls, you're just going to get one match winner. But as a coach, are you able to identify that match winner? Or are you looking at a match winner just in Hyderabad, for instance? Or are you looking at a match winner who comes from Adilabad and wins a game for Hyderabad? So that's how I feel that as a coach, you need to have an eye on that. And if we start doing that, that's going to make a lot of difference.
Fair enough. I'm glad you brought up the 2017 World Cup, because that sort of started this big push that we had for women's cricket. And from there till when you retired, we had so many changes come about. There was so much clamoring for that Women's Premier League to just start off. There was like 3-4 years of people constantly asking for domestic league cricket here. Besides that, we also had equal pay, at least in the match fee that came up for women. Now, what I'd like to ask you is, you've obviously been the face of the national team for a very long time. Have you seen some of that success or some of that recognition that you all got trickle down to the grassroots? You were recently in Srinagar as well, and you managed to see some cricket happening there also. Are you seeing any of that trickling down to like the most basal of units of cricket?
Well, definitely yes, but a lot more work needs to be done when it comes to that level. Yes, there are many parents now who are very optimistic and positive to put their girls into the sport, looking at what the sport can fetch them. Because that was a huge question mark way back in the 90s, that, okay, the girl is played for India, but what is she getting back in return? There was no recognition, there was no glory, there was no financial help. Even if you play for India in those years, you wouldn't earn anything back. But today, you play for India, you're a contracted player, you get match fees, your access to different leagues, through which you again get your revenue. So there are a lot more scope and avenue for players who, if they don't make it to the Indian team, they still have other platforms where they can outshine and show their talent. And that is the reason why I think the parents now are even more open to putting their girls into the sport. And when it comes to the grassroots level, yes, there are districts who are keen. There are some of the coaches who are keen to develop that one player who can come from the district and make a huge name for them. Like we have in our own women's cricket team, we have so many girls who come from the interiors. And when they get back after playing for India, they are celebrated in that small place. So that works well for both, for the family, for the players, and for overall in that area. Like look at, you have an example, you have a role model. So in today's time, the more visible you are to people, I think it works very well. And the state associations are also working in creating that structure for the girls. But yes, we need to have more facilities in the districts, because now you see a lot more girls migrate from the districts to come to the cities in search of the facility and get into the state side. If we can give them more access to these facilities in district, then they will have it closer to home, and they probably will invest a lot more time in training than thinking about where is a better facilities and where are more opportunities.
Right, fair enough. I'm glad you brought up facilities, because there was a time when I think you keep going for international tours and then you come back and train in a school ground here or an academy ground here. So in that sense, as coach, as player, or even just as people looking to identify talent, right? What facilities do you think, maybe academy grounds or just local structures like this where you all can maybe conduct a scouting camp or check out what talents are like? What basic infrastructure should be there? Is there anything that maybe Hyderabad particularly can improve on?
Yeah, it's been 20 years since I'm staying in Hyderabad. So the only difference I see, I've visited a lot of places, but Hyderabad is one place which is blessed to have grounds which are in the heart of the city. So if those grounds can be hired or leased, and there will be facilities like for cricket, you know, as of now the demand says that at least you need to have at least 2 turf wickets, 1 cement wicket, 2 AstroTurf wickets, and a ground which is accessible enough, a center wicket where they can play some games. And I think we have the facilities in the heart of the city. Okay, so if this is kind of provided, you know, it's going to be I would say it's like a player is going to be blessed to have such, because we have seen the struggle. We've seen a lot of struggle happening and traveling. The travel was a major part for us. So now at least, like Mithali mentioned, there are a lot of parents who are quite encouraging, because my mom still feels that I should have been a CA. Okay, in spite of playing for India, coaching India, so she still feels that I should have been sitting in an office which is an AC office in spite of this. But now the parents themselves are taking the initiative of coming out. I've seen a lot of parents who spend 2 hours. How do they spend the 2 hours watching their kids play? My dad has never seen me in a blue jersey. So that's the difference. Okay, now the parents are quite vocal about providing the best facilities, providing the best kit, which is important. Okay, they are ready to spend, obviously, because of the system has changed, the structure has changed. We were not blessed. But if we can get these facilities in each ground which is available at the heart of the city, I don't think why a game should not improve. Definitely, because that's what a player looks at, you know. So I think these are the things which we can cover up.
Fair enough. You all are also part of a very big domestic giant, which is the railways. Sort of takes all of the wins, all of the records, all of the victories, trophies, everything away. You've had a great season as coach for the last couple of years. What can you maybe take from those systems, how successful those systems are, and bring those down to like the grassroots, maybe at the school level or the district level? I'm sure the levels are very different, but any takeaways that you might have for local cricket in the city?
I think one of the best structured way of handling this is just monitoring performances of players over a period of time. That's what, as railways, we do it. There's a system placed, especially like when I talk about railways, we have an inter-railway which happens where, you know, these different railways of all over India, we meet and we play a T20 tournament. From there, the Super Leagues are the 50 overs game. And then we select the best 25, and they have to undergo a grind of about, I would say, 3 months of practice, like with breaks, and which includes a lot of fitness tests. Then it boils down to their skill testing and then playing matches, and that's how we get our 15. So the cream of railways is the Indian Railways team. And before getting to any domestic tournament, at least I know that my team plays about minimum of 30 games. So you see a different Indian Railways when they're playing the domestic, they are dominant. So basically a player is looking at a growth, and there's a process in that. Like, you know, in a point of view of a coach, if you're looking at, I'm going to put a player into a grind of a fitness level and then a skill level and then take it forward from there. So that's how it is. And if you want any state to develop, I think this is the mantra.
Right. From your end, Mithali?
Well, as she said, just adding to it, if you have a pool of players that a state can pick, because you have under 16, you have under 19, sometimes there's 23, sometimes there's no consistency in that, and then the senior level. If you want to pick the quality players and form a team, then you probably have to have matches. You have to put them through the grind, as she rightly said. That's what we do in Indian Railways. And then you filter them. That's where you get the best. But if you're going to have open trials, you cannot really pick a quality player in nets batting for just 5 minutes. Because a player is seen in the match. Temperament, technique, building of innings, and that is possible only when you watch them match after match, whether they have the endurance to perform that way match after match. So it's just not about training, but also helping them go through that process in itself will develop patience in the players. Because in today's time, I feel everybody wants everything too soon, but quality doesn't come that way.
Fair enough. When we talk to you all at the international level, one of the things we ask you about is would you have liked to, or would you like to play more red ball cricket? So now how does that conversation happen in age group cricket? Because everyone's just having leagues. We want to pick out people for white ball formats because they're faster, they're easier to conduct. How do we prioritize red ball cricket then at maybe fledgling level of cricket for girls?
Well, you don't really have a red ball tournament right now, even for the seniors. So it would be highly unlikely to sort of get that into the levels. But yes, one thing that the coaches can do is to train them with the red ball, because there is a very different concept to facing a red ball and the white ball. There's a lot more movement in the red ball, and it helps you when you're a young cricketer, budding cricketer. It helps you to negate the swing, which we all try to do it at the higher level. So this is something one of the coaches told me, that before going into playing at England, you might as well train with the red ball first. Even if it's a white ball that you're going and playing, you train with the red ball, because then you know how you're going to fare in the England conditions. Yeah. So if you want the young girls to develop their technique, maybe at that level, a lot more of training in the red ball, in the camps, in the training sessions, and that probably will help them to have a far more stronger technique to jump from one format to the other. I am not a big fan of introducing a T20 format in the levels for the under 16 and 19, but if that is the format or the vehicle that is used by boards and the ICC to promote the sport, then probably this way you can actually get young girls to better their technique.
Fair enough. Coach?
Right, likely what she said, I totally agree to it, because what has happened is when we started off our career, we had a lot of under 19 games which were days games, and we played a lot of red ball. So obviously for a player to enhance their particular performance, it's about just repetition of what you're doing. And that will only happen if you want to put them in a match situation that has to be a 90-over game. And we played a lot of that. So ideally, I felt that my cricket got better as a bowler because I kept bowling overs and overs. In a day, I used to bowl about 25 overs. So given a choice to me, I would always say that test cricket is something which is going to make any cricketer excel. See, ultimately what happens when you're playing white ball cricket, I'm sure that, a player who's walking in for practice wants to bat 1 hour. And what's that? That's test game. So ultimately somebody who wants to build their temperament is again getting back to red ball cricket. So I would say that even, you can have league matches where the under 16 and 19 is involved, because now the under 19 World Cup is around again. So if we can start building on temperament and having that, it's okay if the ICC doesn't have it or the BCCI is not having too many, but at state level, it's in your hands, it's in your control. So under 16 and under 19 are the levels we're looking at, where you start building their temperaments to become better cricketers, because your decision making comes there, which is the most important as a player. So if you can start off at the grassroots level of that tender age, you're going to have wonderful cricketers up.
Fair enough. Talking about tender cricketers, we've got a lot of coaches here in our midst here who've coached players. Gopi Chand sir is going to join us. We've got Tilak Verma's coach sitting in the audience with us. Coaches are so important to get talents out as well, right? So when it comes to maybe city level cricket or just state level cricket, how important is it to groom good coaches as well? Because we're talking about matches, wickets, players, tournaments, all of that. What happens? How do you maybe nurture better coaches for the girls in the city? From your own experiences, maybe, of the coaches you might have had.
Probably I would say that, sometimes you start working, because as a coach, I have learned a lot by working with different people. Irrelevant of whether that coach is a level A coach or a B coach or a C coach, because every coach has got a different point of view, and every coach has that one thing that the player needs to improve. So they have different ways of doing it, different methodologies of doing it. So there is no harm. I still remember that when I was in Hyderabad, Vijay Anand, and at that point of time, Dilip was just catching up with his coaching. They used to conduct a lot of level O's. So if we can get that culture and system where, you know, every year we have these classes which are conducted at the state level only just for, you know, a brush up, a refresher course, or a course where the coaches come together, they have a workshop happening, which used to happen, is going to help a lot of you know, upcoming coaches to take up that. And that's how we have grown as coaches. I still attend workshops because that's something which I'm looking at, that one particular thing which is going to make a difference. So the learning is always there. Learning is only going to end when you're getting into the grave. It's not going to end before that. So every person you meet in your life is going to teach you something, and that's going to help. And plus, as coaches, you can conduct different, you know, you can go to different camps. Probably have a culture in the sense that if a state coach is there, he can always attend a camp for a workshop for 2 days, you know. So that way, that particular camp coach is going to have, as a consultant, he can go. So, you know, the cricket is improving in the camp. This way, there are a lot of ways you can reach out and have this educationing happen in Hyderabad. So that's something which is not that tough to travel, but, you know, at least we're building a culture.
Fair enough. Mithali, as a player, what would you want coaches to have, or what would you want to see maybe in the coaching structure of the state and the city?
See, if it's very different when you're coaching a young raw talent, maybe a 11-year-old, 12-year-old, to coaching an international player. There is a vast difference in the way you approach coaching for these two players. I personally feel in today's time, the coaches also should have the human relation side of it, just not the technique and preparing a player for a tournament, but the players go through a range of emotions and the mental setup that they require, and it is never the same every series. So if the coach is able to get beyond the technique, of course technique is important, you nurture a talent, you show them how to play, but the other side of it is that everybody say you have to be mentally strong. But what is mentally strong for a 12-year-old? How are you going to teach them to be mentally strong? How are you going to teach them to find that composure in chaos? Because a lot of them fear stage. Like competition period, they're very good in the nets, especially the young talent. But when you put them into a tournament, there is those nerves. How do you tell them to absorb that, accept that it's going to be part of your throughout the career till you play? It's a very common thing. But these are things that young talent needs to be you know, taught. This is what they need to be taught. Technique will come because, as she said, reputation. Even today, after years of it, if you tell me wake up in the midnight and play a stroke, I would, because that's how my body is conditioned after so many years of training. But if you talk about my mental side, I might not be there. I might not be ready to play that shot. Mentally, I'm not there. So that requires, again, training. So the mental aspect of it, I feel that the earlier coaches probably were more into that aspect. They would understand, say a talent comes from districts. They are not exposed to the city life. How are you going to teach them? How are you going to get them into, you know, the discipline and the other aspects of training? They are coming from a place where they have not seen this life. They might be having other troubles at home, because these are very common factors that every athlete has. As a coach, you have to be the confidant, because I think that is what a young talent or raw talent look up to, because someone who's teaching you, you should be able to allow them to speak freely, express freely what their vulnerabilities are. Today, I don't feel that, because the term professionalism is everywhere. Even the coaches, they've done level 1, level 2, but if you ask them, how do I deal with my emotional stuff? Probably they don't have an answer to it. So as a player, I feel that is one of the factors or one of the aspects that the coaches also need to be learned.
I think what she mentioned was right, because as a coach, my career started off with under 16, and I was a part of the under 19 and then the senior team. And the biggest challenge you face is how are you going to handle a player mentally? It's not about technique, because sometimes a player possesses everything. So as a coach, that was the biggest challenge. And I think if you want to rate yourself as the most successful coach, the mantra is that can you get 15 different heads under one roof thinking the same thing? And if you're able to do that, you can be the best coach.
Right, fair enough. We've dealt with one end of the spectrum. Now the topic itself that we have is putting women's cricket to the forefront. So a lot of that also involves visibility of matches, watching your national cricketers play in front of you, watching cricket happen in front of you. We've seen that happening with Lucknow. Lucknow has become a very preferred venue when it comes to maybe teams touring India when ODIs happen, T20Is happen. Do you think maybe Hyderabad or Telangana can step up there in terms of hosting games, in terms of having international matches happen here, just getting local crowds to come and watch women's international cricket happening here? Will that benefit?
Well, I'm sure it will benefit. One of the peeves that I had before retirement was I didn't get to play a match here in the Uppal Stadium. Didn't get to at least play in front of my own people. I think Lakshman was very lucky to get that. I think, yes, definitely, because Hyderabad is also a hub for a lot of people who love sport, love cricket, and we do have so many athletes coming from this part of country. So why not have many tournaments, especially women's tournament, I would say, to have it conducted in the stadium, because that is one place that I've not been that often. I would love to now, since you've asked me that question. I would love to see a lot more matches being happening in that stadium, international game, because if you want to promote women's cricket, ideally it should be conducted in every state of the country where there is international stadium. Get family, get young children, school-going children to come and watch them play, because that's how we are going to promote the sport. As I said, visibility, but it's just not on television or the branding of it, but this way you will generate that interest in young girls, because at one point they would also dream of seeing themselves play in this huge stadium that they've come to watch. So yes, why not have a lot more games?
Fair enough. And as franchisees, because now we have the Women's Premier League, we know that teams are scouting, they're going around, they're testing players from different kinds of spaces, different states. So in that sense, how do you think maybe franchisee cricket can play a role in, getting matches to a particular place, or just coming down, checking out talent, having scouting camps, having exercises in different regions? Is that something that can help sort of bring a robust nature to the system here?
Well, franchises, I'm sure they have their own scouting thing and everything in place. Yes, we are with the Gujarat Giants, so we recently had a scouting program for 3 days where we had the entire South Zone, the best of every state come and, showcase that why should we prefer them. Similarly, we are going to do for the rest of the states in our country. But every franchisee has their own home ground, home state. So likewise, we are trying to build a fan base in Gujarat, in Ahmedabad. I'm sure like whenever a franchisee from Hyderabad will come up at some point, then we will have the Uppal Stadium as a home stadium for them very soon. But yes, as far as the franchisees are concerned, I'm sure they do have everything in place to identify, pick talents so that they can nurture them for coming seasons and invest in them. Yeah.
Right. So if I could just, summarize this entire thing, if you had maybe a 3-point or a 4-point wish list for women's cricket, particularly in this state or in this region of the country, what would that be? Maybe things that you just want to see improve in the next couple of years.
For Telangana, I would say definitely something like a league concept, because you have for the men's, you have so many clubs, maybe encourage clubs to have women's team and have that culture also for women's cricket here in Telangana, and pick your best best state side from that. And also probably now with every state having their own leagues for the girls, someone can also come up with a league of our own here. Because how long can you have academies? Day in, day out, yes, we are playing for what? To perform in the matches. So you're giving them a platform to perform. So you can have a league system there so that the young girls who tomorrow go on to play these franchise leagues are exposed to that sort of an environment at this level. And they are not getting overawed by getting selected in one of the franchises, because that we've seen in the recently, the first season of WPL, where few state players were overwhelmed with the stage and they didn't end up performing the way they should. So, of course, later on they were disappointed, but it's not their fault because they've never really been on a stage like that. So, to cut that out, you can have a small league of your own within the state, where you also have girls from the districts, giving them an opportunity to come and play. So, in a way, you're giving them matches. You also are identifying talent, you're scouting. So, everything happens in that tournament. So, I think these couple of things is what I look for the state. Yeah.
Nooshin, we've got schools here who will then come and talk to us about what they can do to nurture sports. As a coach, since you're always on the hunt for talent and for people to groom into teams, what would your wish list for these schools maybe be?
I think the schools here do have a lot of space. So I'm sure they can, likewise, if you can accommodate a wicket, especially for cricket, and have a school team. So, you can take it forward from there, because that's how we talk about a lot of grassroots level, but the grassroots level will start from schools. It's going to start from districts. It's not going to start from academies, because academies are places where, out of 100 kids, you're going to find 10 girls and 90 boys. But in a school, you're going to get those 15 girls. And in that 15, I'm sure there will be one talent which can be taken ahead for the state, for that particular. And probably, you can have an inter-school, and that's how you're going to get that talent up. But definitely, if you have the resources at the school level, a 22-yard is not that tough to create. I'm sure in Keysai school, initial days, I actually started off where I used to roll the wicket, get 2 wickets done there, ask the Keysai school girls to come over, and they will, I still remember going at 6 in the morning, trying to get at least a pool of 5 players who could go and represent the state level of under 16 and under 19. It's not tough. And at the same time, you're just not nurturing the kids, but you're also getting a coach developed there. Because when you start at the grassroots level, you really know. I started my career as a grassroots level. I have taken, the first win of mine was under 16. So there is no harm, there is no tag just because you have been an India player, you should not be coaching under 16. I think that is one level which you actually should start off with. And likewise, I said, I did the school, I've done travel to districts, traveled I still remember 7-8 days I used to travel continuously to find the talent. It's not tough, but then trust me, it reaps a lot, because you're coming across different minds, you're coming across their habits, you're coming across how a player thinks, and you're just not allowing the player to grow, but you're growing as a coach as well. So it's a two-way benefit, and I'm sure that we can accommodate. I've seen Hyderabad, I've gone around, there's a lot of space. 22 yards is not less.
Fair enough.
Well, just to add to what she said, even if you don't happen to get 15 girls, because usually it's a little tough to get even 11 players to form a team.
Yeah.
I would say develop a culture where you have girls and boys forming a team. Because that's what I saw in England, in Australia, when you speak to those young girls there, they're part of the school team where they have boys and girls playing for the school. So why not we develop that sort of a culture here? Why do we have girls and boys team separately? If you are not able to form a girls team, you probably push them to get into the boys side. And that way you're also changing the mindset like girls and boys separate. Why do we need to have that? If the girl is good enough to get into the boys team, even if it is under 14, get a 12-year-old or a 15-year-old girl play the boys side. So they eventually will learn a lot more things playing along with the boys than playing in a group of girls team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want both of you to answer this. In terms of competition, how much has women's cricket, how much evolution it has seen in terms of athleticism, endurance, muscle power? Because a lot of people say, "Ladkiyan bhagti to hai nahi. They don't run fast, they don't bowl fast, so or they don't hit hard." So I want you to say, are they wrong?
Well, I would say definitely they are wrong because they are looking at comparing a men's athletic behavior to the women's athleticism. I would definitely say that the women's game has improved, in fact, by leaps and bounds with the T20 and with the leagues everywhere. WBBL, of course, is a pro in that it's been like 7 to 8 years that WBBL has come into inception. So with that, every cricketer understands what is required in today's time is the power game, and that you can develop when you are physically strong, and that's why they hit the gym every day. I mean, there are players who even skip training, but they regularly go for gym sessions, and they work on their power shots. And from 120 in today's time, the T20 format, where the women are scoring about 170, 180. So that is because they are able to score a lot more sixes and boundaries. We did see in the WBBL, in Premier League, how the matches have been. They were very closely fought and they were pretty much high scoring games. So I think if they are very good, if they are putting up a good standard, good batting display, good fielding display, I'm sure there are many people have turned up to the ground. There been so many viewers also watching it. So if the standard is not so good, we probably wouldn't be a success. Because the girls have done well, I think that the WPL has been a success, and people should not look at women's cricket in search of comparing with the men's cricket, because both the sports are very different. Yes, it's cricket, the rules, everything is the same, but the journey of both the sports are very different, and people should watch sport for what it is rather than for comparing, because then you lose out the very essence of enjoying a sport.
And what is the most striking feature of women's cricket? I mean, what is the most attractive part? Why would you want me to come and watch women's cricket?
Well, I wouldn't want you to come and watch the WPL or an international game, but I would always want you to come and watch an under 15 NCA camp which I conducted in Alur, and I was shocked as a coach that I saw a 13-year-old kid hitting 70 meters. She was from Haryana, Adya Gupta is her name, and it was very surprising for me. And she could do it every time you asked her to do it. So my only thing is that if a Deepti Sharma can turn a ball and a Chahal can turn the ball in the same degree, what is the difference? It is the same. If a Smriti Mandana can play a cover drive and a Virat Kohli can play a cover drive, what is the difference? It's just about the power. अब वो तो हमारे हाथ में नहीं है, वो भगवान ने ऐसे बना दिया. But otherwise, the degree of turn, the grace of cover drive is the same. Harmanpreet Kaur can also hit a 6.
Thank you, I agree.
Thank you so much, Mithali. Thank you, Nooshin, for joining us today. It was always fun talking to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time and valuable insights. With the kind of talent emerging from various parts of the world, there's no better time than now for women's cricket to take center stage and for India to be in the thick of it all. I request Mr. Vijay Lokpalli to present a token of appreciation. everyone.